Looking at the German Abwehr, the military intelligence agency, I cannot help but think of a badly made vegetable soup. All kinds of veggies, rotten and fresh, mixed up into a soup that not even the chef himself could enjoy. You see, the Abwehr serves two masters. On one end, Hitler and the Nazis, and on the other end, its leader, Admiral Canaris, Wilhelm. And here he is, and a group of officers opposed to Nazism. They are the Schwarze Kapelle, the Black Orchestra. The resulting symphony of espionage is a cacophony of failures for everyone involved. I'm Astrid Deinhard. This is a World War II in real-time Spies and Ties special about the German military intelligence agency, the Abwehr, and the mysterious group of double agents working inside of it. Hitler is a big fan of a lot of things. One of them is the British intelligence agency, which he believes is the very key to Britain's power, which he envies. He wants something similar for his own military, and that will be the Abwehr. The Abwehr was established in 1920 as part of the Federal Ministry of Defense, when the German government was allowed to form the Reichswehr, the military organization of the Weimar Republic. Even though Germany wasn't allowed to engage in foreign espionage following World War I, contracts and so on, the Abwehr started monitoring radio communication, engaged in counter-espionage, in reconnaissance, which is really just a synonym for, indeed, espionage. When the Nazis seize power, the Abwehr is led by Fregattenkapitän Konrad Patzig. But he gets into trouble with Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, and is released in January 1935 and sent to command the new pocket battleship Admiral Graf Spee, and becomes Chief of Naval Personnel. His replacement is another Reichsmarine veteran, Admiral Wilhelm Canaris. There you have him again. Not to be confused with the Greek Admiral Canaris, here he is, different admiral, not related, but a very big role model for that one. After some hefty political machinations between Patzig on his way out and other high-ranking Navy and Army members, and head of the SS Intelligence Services, the SD, Reinhard Heydrich, who wanted to assimilate all intelligence agency into his SD. Canaris finally gets the position of Abwehr chief on January 1st, 1935. And that was his very 84. No. It was his 48th birthday. Okay, sorry for that. Wilhelm is an old-school military guy. He served in the German Navy during the Great War, already then as an intelligence officer on the SMS Dresden, and commanded a U-boat in the final years of the war. After November 18, Canaris supports the German Freikorps in their first fight against the communists during the 1819 German Revolution. He then continues to serve with the Reichswehr Navy, becoming captain of the battleship Schlesien in 1932. Like most old-school military veterans, Canaris is skeptical when this Hitler guy assumes power in 1933, though this sentiment soon makes place for overwhelming positivity. See, Canaris is a conservative nationalist. He didn't like the soft democratic Weimar Republic at all. Instead, Canaris prefers a robust authoritarian leader who would reinstate the honor and values associated with German militarism. He is also a staunch anti-communist, so he puts aside his reservations for the short Jew-hating World War I corporal, you know which, and gets aboard the Nazi train. Now, Hitler wants to make his Abwehr bigger and better, unconventional, with the right amount of autonomy to deliver the most spectacular results. Most important, better than the British intelligence. And he's in luck. Canaris, being a highly creative and ambitious guy, Canaris remodels the Abwehr to his own liking. And what was his liking? He enlarges the Abwehr a lot, like Adolf wants it. The Abwehr now grows from about 150 employees to almost 1,000, and by 1938, the Abwehr is reorganized into 5 sections. I tell you what. The Foreign Department, who evaluates foreign military intelligence and liaises with the Wehrmacht. Then Section Z. This is the organizational brain of the Abwehr headed by Canaris confidant Hans Oster. Section 1 is all about foreign espionage with separate bureaus dedicated to Army HQ staff, the Heer, the Kriegsmarine, Luftwaffe, Industry Science, and the East and the West. Section 2, responsible for sabotage and commando activities. They rely on the Brandenburger Special Forces, very interesting group of fighters, which can be deployed behind enemy lines. Finally, Section 3, who operate domestic intelligence, infiltration, and counter-espionage. We've seen this section in action in our episode on the Rote Kapelle. If you didn't see it, watch it. In his first years leading the Abwehr, Canaris works in tandem with the Nazis and the SD. He calls for comradely cooperation with the Gestapo, and he truly wants his department to aid the Nazi government any way they can. The Abwehr nails its prediction of the British response to the reoccupation of the Rhineland and fights an intensive intelligence battle during the Spanish Civil War. But as the 1930s progress, Canaris' relationship with the Nazis begin to get, let's say, difficult. He is appalled by the anti-Semitic brown mob and looks for an elegant way to help at least some German Jews. He finds one by simply, hold your shorts, employing them for the Abwehr as spies. Checked, approved, stamped, get in, bam. Once in, they most often have nothing to do except be very secret, which puts them out of the reach of the Gestapo and the SS. Then, one instance really disgruntles him, or rather makes him really mad. It's the alleged involvement of the SD in the Soviet Great Purge, which Heydrich imagines. We don't know if it's true even in 2021, but Heydrich is convinced that the SD has triggered Stalin's purges by forging documents suggesting close cooperation between Soviet General Tukhachevsky and the Wehrmacht. To add insults to injury, Hitler assumes complete control over the German Armed Forces, OKW, in 1938, after the BloombergFritz Affair, when he gets rid of the most important critics of his aggressive, conflict-prone foreign policy. Canaris realizes that with Heydrich, Himmler, and Hitler on top, Germany will descend down in a violent, irrational path towards total destruction. That is, if no one stops them. So, Canaris starts to shape the Abwehr into his personal instrument, rather than one of the Nazis. Historian Richard Bassett gives an interesting description of the Abwehr as a small but effective Trojan horse within a criminal regime, a beacon of decency and honor in the ever-darkening night of moral disintegration. Canaris starts to surround himself with loyalists to him, not to Hitler, and others with a distaste for the Nazi way. The Nazis will later call them the, as I mentioned, Schwarze Kapelle, the Black Orchestra. He sets up secret guidelines to avoid the Abwehr from contributing to radical SD or Nazi policies, including the orchestration of a new war. But you can't control the Abwehr if you're not the head of the Abwehr, right? Which means he needs to keep his job and keep his superiors kind of happy. And even though Canaris might be able to surround himself with like-minded anti-Nazi at the top of the Abwehr, many Nazis do remain present all throughout the Abwehr ranks. This results in the Abwehr being kind of a mixed bag. Like I said, this vegetable soup, Oster, for example, becomes an active part of the German resistance after being shocked by the brutality displayed during the Night of the Long Knives and thought of the Nazis as nothing but a bunch of dirty crooks. That's what he said. Others are vivid supporters of Hitler, like Rudolf Bammler, here he is, who leads Section 3, Counterintelligence, from 33 to 39, and works closely with the Gestapo and the SD. The dual nature of Canaris' role shows as he sends an emissary to the British to warn them of Hitler's intention, while at the same time infiltrating Polish defenses and planning covert attacks against Britain. And despite further attempts to weaken Germany's position, Canaris can't stop the European war from breaking out, as we all know, in 39. But when it does, Canaris and his loyal subordinates do try to hold the German expansion. During the entire war, Canaris and subs will keep in touch with the Allies via, among others, Roots, Switzerland, and the Vatican. In early 1940, Oster warns the Dutch about an upcoming invasion. Later the same year, Canaris dissuades Spanish dictator Franco, whom he already knew, from joining the war on the Axis side while visiting him on envoy for Hitler. At many points, Canaris sends secret information to the chief of MI6, Stuart Menzies. But they still have to work for the Nazis, right? In 1939, the Abwehr helps the SD to compile a list with more than 60,000 names of Polish elite, professors, journalists, and such, who are interned or most often executed. The most successful operation of the Abwehr is Operation Nordpol, also known as the Englandspiel. Using the codes of a captured Dutch agent, the Abwehr manages to read encoded messages from the British SOE, which is parachuting Dutch agents into occupied territory. One of them, Huub Lauwers, is captured and persuaded, you know how that works, by the Abwehr to engage in radio contact with England. Despite Lauwers leaving out his security checks, the British continue to send new agents and equipment to the Netherlands, all of which are captured upon arrival, of course. The Spiel continues for years, despite some brighter brains in the SOE are suspected that they are being played. The warnings are ignored, and 54 Dutch agents are apprehended and 50 of them will be executed in Mauthausen concentration camp in 1944. But more often than not, the Abwehr, deliberately or not, fails to get results. Part of that can be blamed on its rather lax personnel policies. They are often careless in acquiring agents and informants, allowing infiltration from double agents, and recruiting incompetent operators, resulting in botched operations. One of the most dramatic examples of this is Operation Pistorius in June 1942, in which 8 German agents are smuggled into the US. They are to sabotage American economic targets like factories, electrical plants, and infrastructure. and to generally saw Mayen. They are dropped by a submarine on the sunny beaches of Amagansett, Long Island. A U.S. Coast Guardsman, John Cullen was his name, discovers them while on a routine beach patrol. George Dash, leader of the landing party, bribes Cullen to keep silent. Instead, Cullen walks away, but as soon as he is out of sight, he sprints to 2 miles back to the Coast Guard station and sounds the alert. But the Germans are gone and have already boarded a train to Manhattan. Now the largest manhunt of the FBI begins, but Dash soon turns himself in on account of hating Nazism. You know what he did? He simply walks into the FBI headquarters in Washington and shows them the tens of thousands of dollars the Abwehr gave him to fund the operation. All 8 men are arrested and put in front of a military court that did not turn all that good, right? 6 of them are executed on August the 8th, 1942 for espionage. Dash himself is put into prison, gets 30 years, but will be released in 1948, that was, and sent back to West Germany. It's hard to say if it's incompetence or willful planning by Canaris when the Abwehr fails this spectacular or missed sign of key events, including the Allied plans for the invasion of North Africa and Italy. In any case, this, sagen wir mal, I can't say your sagen wir mal, okay? In any case, sagen wir mal, this poor performance leads to increasing criticism from the Third Reich's leadership. In early 1942, Heydrich starts personally investigating Canaris. But then Heydrich is killed in Operation Anthropoid. Now, that assassination is carried out by Czechoslovak agents trained by the British Special Operation Executive, but it's also partly orchestrated by MI6, especially to take the heat of Canaris. That was close. With Heydrich gone, the SD's position is temporarily weakened, but the new leader of the SD, Ernst Kaltenbrunner, continues the investigation. In April 1943, they make their first strike when Oster is implicated in potentially treasonous acts. Oster is removed from office and placed in house arrest. What had happened? In September 1939, the conspirators around Hans Oster and Hans von Dohnanyi had asked their colleague, Josef Müller, here he is, to establish contact with the British government via Vatican and in this way to try to end the war. Canaris is, however, still untouchable, but the anti-Canaris movement gains more momentum as the Abwehr fails to deliver results and the tides of war start to turn against the Germans. The final nail will be hammered in the Abwehr's coffin early 1944. Okay, the Gestapo infiltrates an anti-Nazi gathering, exposing ties to Erich Vermehren, an Abwehr agent stationed in Istanbul. Instead of complying with the Gestapo by returning to Germany for questioning, Erich Baba Julius Vermehren, that's his whole name, defects to the British. Hitler is furious and accuses Canaris of allowing the Abwehr to disintegrate. Canaris' cold reaction. That is hardly surprising, as Germany is losing the war. Can you imagine? Hitler will not have it and fires Canaris on February 18, 1944, after which all the Abwehr duties are transferred to the SD. Canaris himself is promoted. away to Chief of the Special Office for Economic Warfare, just an invention. So it's not a thing, Donna, right? But most of the Abwehr's leadership remain loyal to Canaris. They love him and are of little use to the SD. German foreign intelligence will not recover and will again prove unable to unravel Allied plans for the invasion of Western Europe. Who is surprised? Ultimately, Canaris will be implicated by the Stauffenberg plot on July 20th, 44, although he won't really take part in it. However, when the so-called Zossen documents are uncovered, a stash of secret Abwehr documents detailing the many Nazi crimes and atrocities, there is no question about Canaris' true loyalty. See, the documents, unfortunately, also include Canaris' diaries, detailing his private thoughts and motivations, as well as his many meetings with Allied agents. Shouldn't have done that. He's imprisoned, together with the other conspirators, including Oster, though Himmler sees the value of his Allied network and keeps him alive until the very last moment. And it would have just been one more month for him to survive. Canaris is hanged on April 9th, 45. In his last message, which in line with Canaris' legacy is conveyed to the prisoner next door in code, Canaris says, "I die for my fatherland. I have a clean conscience. I only did my duty for my country when I tried to oppose the criminal folly of Hitler leading Germany to destruction. Look after my wife and daughters." From Hitler's and his cronies' points of view, the Abwehr was woefully inefficient and invested with corrupt and politically compromised agents. From our point of view, Canaris might look like an opposition to tyranny who did too little, too late. He was a double agent, not for financial or social gain, but for ideological conviction. He was a patriot, but also an opponent to Nazism, at least when it counted. He walked on a tightrope, balancing his conviction against the ability to enable opposition. A circus act that inevitably saw him caught between being a Nazi accomplice and an opponent in one. He personally protected select Jews inside the Reich and occupied lands while supervising the compilation of death lists for other victims of Nazi terror. His organization aided and abetted Nazi war crimes and crimes against humanity, but it also protected men like Hans Oster, enabling their true outright resistance to Nazism, including attempts at high-level coups to rid the world of Hitlerism. Ultimately, Canaris' Abwehr failed in both their missions. They did not overthrow Hitler, and they did not assure an Axis victory on the intelligence war, but perhaps that is all that one can do when opposing terror, but faced with impossible odds, failing for the greater good. We have made a special episode about Hans Oster, who, as we saw together with Canaris, resisted the Nazis from within. You can click right here for that. And, not to forget, join the Time Ghost Army at patreon.com or timeghost.tv to make sure we can continue making specials, just like this one. Subscribe, and I will see you next time, darlings.